What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar thus far, what the news is saying about Tesla, and what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I bring anything down all this information, before I talk about all these different tickers and some very important levels on Tesla, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. So anyways, let's talk about what's going on with Tesla. Let's talk about the charts thus far. Looking at Tesla, we had a pretty decent day as Tesla outperformed SPY and the QQQ, and this thing made an attempt to uptrend today. However, Tesla failed to break 238 for the short term because we ended up seeing the market anchoring it down. Not to mention the fact that we didn't get one immediate catalyst to push this up like really, really hard. Most of the news about Tesla was very mixed today, in my opinion. However, I just want to note that we're getting closer to the Cybertruck event, and typically during these events, we tend to see some upside, at least for Tesla, but nothing is guaranteed after the event ends up ending. So the Cybertruck event is going to be happening on Thursday, right? The last day of November at 1 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be happening very, very soon. I think there's potential for upside for Tesla, but the question is, will we get that break very soon, and what level should we be watching for? I'm going to be talking about all of this in just a couple of minutes. I just first want to go over the news and what's happening with the data coming out for tomorrow. So for the economic report, I just want to mention that most of the data that came out today was quite decent. New home sales were a little bit down, but for tomorrow, we're going to be watching the house price index before market open, which is not that crazy. But then the more important data is going to be coming out right here at around 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the consumer confidence report coming out at 10 a.m., not to mention the manufacturing numbers from the Richmond Fed Index. This is going to be important, so watch for some volatility at 10 a.m. And then besides that, there's not really a whole lot else coming out except for a bunch of Fed speakers. Right? We have Waller from the Fed giving a speech at 10, not to mention Bowman later on. Then we have Barr giving two speeches throughout the day. So we have a bunch of Fed speakers once again for Tuesday. We'll see what they cause, but I think the biggest piece of news, the biggest piece of data is coming out at 10 a.m. Don't forget that the data is going to become more intense starting on Wednesday as we have the GDP numbers. We have PCE coming out for Thursday, and then Friday is going to be a big day as we have Jerome Powell giving another speech. So don't forget about that, guys, especially Powell's speech on Friday. For now, let's not focus on that. We're just going to focus on this data. I want to call out when it comes to earnings, nothing really crazy is coming out for the next couple of days. For Tuesday, we just have a couple of others, nothing too big. For Wednesday, we have Foot Locker, Dollar Tree, Salesforce, Snow. I know someone that trades it all the time for Wednesday. And then for Thursday, we have TD Bank, we have Big Lots, not to mention Dell, and Dell is going to be one of the biggest ones of the week. So make sure you're prepared for that for Thursday. But that's pretty much it for earnings, nothing too crazy. On the fear and greed index, we're becoming more greedy than before. We're not at extreme levels just yet, but we're still quite greedy. But we're seeing other indicators becoming more, or I would say extremely greedy. Market momentum is extremely greedy as the market is pumped like crazy. The stock price strength report is right once again on the greed side, so it's quite greedy. Looking at greed, we're just seeing this all over the market, and the put and call options positioning is on extreme greed. This is very important because we saw a lot of these puts being closed, and now the ratio of puts to calls has been going down. With puts being closed, this is what helped fuel the rally, leading to a short squeeze. And as we're seeing more calls being bought, this is when investors are becoming greedy alongside retail. And this is when you need to be very careful because when we hit these extremes, we tend to see the market top or at least get ready for a pullback. So you just want to be careful and you just want to be prepared for that. Besides that, everything else is essentially the same except for the VIX, which is quite neutral. So we'll be watching all of these very, very soon. Finally, for Tesla, I just want to call out Tesla has some interesting looking data. The volume was at 112 million for the day, so a little bit below average as Tesla was kind of flat towards the end, but nothing too insane yet. I want to note that Tesla's volume dropped like crazy last week near the very end, and that's what tends to happen before a big surge is coming. So I think we're going to see a big surge very soon by Wednesday or Thursday, probably during both of those days. And I think that with all the high volume coming out, it's going to affect Tesla's share price. On top of that, we have the price versus short volume report coming out. I'm going to be watching to see if we get an increase in the short volume or not. As of right now, it's very moderate. As far as Tesla goes, nothing's really changing in terms of revenue and things like that. Jeffries is saying hold on to your Tesla shares. They're not turning more bearish or bullish. Price price ratio is flat as Tesla's performing kind of the same as the market. But today, I think this should have gone up just a little bit because Tesla started to outperform just a bit. I think this might go up a little bit more because Tesla might start outperforming the market more towards Wednesday or Thursday. As far as seasonality goes, Tuesdays tend to be green about 52% of the time, and watch for more volatility and potentially even more upside around the second hour of the trading day, also during the 2 p.m. period. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. November tends to be green about 64% of the time for Tesla, so it tends to be a good month. It's been a decent month thus far, but we'll see how it ends with the Cybertruck event. And finally, that's pretty much it for now as far as data goes. Some pieces of news came out. I went over the majority of the headlines throughout my videos today. So I talked about Tesla suing, the Swedish agencies, not to mention some news about Musk and the other things earlier on. If you're interested in seeing those, you can just look at my previous videos. But for now, we basically have another software update coming to Tesla, and it may end up having a front camera washer button and more, which is very, very cool. Very, very awesome stuff for Tesla. And they have to keep these updates coming because once again, it helps to improve with different features, and it could really help them understand the needs of their users and how to improve from them. So that's good news for them. There's going to be a Shaka Media player, which is pretty funny. On top of that, they could reduce or even change the podcast speeds. So just very small little things like this, which really improve the user experience, which is something that's very good about Tesla. And I think this is very cool. Very, very cool update. There's also this news that's very important for Tesla's share price. The Tesla and Chinese rival BYD's $649 billion valuation gap is unjustified, according to Bernstein. Now, this is important because Bernstein is actually kind of like a bearish on both of these companies. They have a lower price target on Tesla of like $150. It's well below what the average tends to be amongst these analysts. But one thing that they're saying is that the valuation gap between Tesla and BYD is just not necessarily justifiable. They think that they're going to get closer, if anything, and they anticipate that for the longer term, okay, we're going to see that bridge end up getting, or that gap getting bridged, basically. So they think what's going to happen over time is the short term is like bearish in their eyes for Tesla. They have like these low targets. You guys can see them right here. They're talking about like a 150 price target for Tesla. But for the long term, okay, they mentioned, I think at the very end, that for the long term, that Tesla's AI value may be under, not overappreciated, and they still have buy ratings once again. And they think that the long term is still very bright and that Tesla's going to be catching up to the valuation, and it's going to be completely fine. So that's basically what's going on right now. They think that Tesla has a very, very good potential for the long term. Short term, they're quite bearish, and they're actually more bearish than most analysts. So I just want to call that out. That's what's making headlines for now. Now, without further ado, I want to talk more about Tesla and the market. How are things looking? Well, just to be clear, guys, I think that SPY is very indecisive, very flat, and Tesla was outperforming SPY and the QQQ for today. Now, looking at Tesla, if you look at the 4-hour time frame, Tesla is forming a base at the 200 EMA, ping-ponging off it, holding it very, very nicely, hitting this 230 area and just holding it over and over again. And that's some good news for Tesla. Now, looking at the chart, right, we had this historical uptrend from the past that was like right here. And Tesla's making an attempt to try to get back into this. You could see how this was dictating Tesla. So what I'm thinking is, if anything, Tesla has the potential to outperform the market, but we have this tight resistance at 238. This 238 zone is very tight. We tend to get rejected here. If we break this, and I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or later on, but I think eventually this week we're going to break it. I think that before the Cybertruck events, Tesla's going to break this. We're going to see some buyers stepping in, maybe by Wednesday or Thursday. And then I think that Tesla's going to be pushed up thanks to this imbalance to at least 242 at the very least, maybe even above that. Could get closer to 245, but I'm not going to overestimate it. I think 242 should be coming. I think Tesla has potential to uptrend. The only issue with Tesla is the market right now is very indecisive. If it does pull back, this could slow Tesla down, make it a little bit harder for it to get to those high targets of like 260, 275, or crazy targets like that. It's much more difficult for Tesla to do that if the market starts selling off. So I just want to call that out. You want to be very careful. But even if the market does remain weak, we could still see Tesla make its way up towards this imbalance. I still think there's a good potential for a setup like that. All right, so I think that it's slowly being attracted up there, and I think it's going to make its way up there. But for now, we're not ready to break out yet because there's no confirmation of that break. All right. So what is Tesla doing? We're kind of choppy for the most, kind of like range bound, going back and forth and back and forth. Watch 235 is key support. We have some support at 236 as well, and then 238 has been resistance. We've been stuck between 235 to 238 for like most of the last 2 days or last two trading days, going back and forth and back and forth. If you lose 235, we could touch 232, but we tend to see buyers kind of like defend right over there. So what I'm thinking is we're going to spend a lot of time between 235 to 238. We might shop around for a little bit longer, but eventually I think we're going to break 238. And I think that either for what by Wednesday or Thursday at the latest, I think we're going to break it and we're going to be watching for 242 at the very least. If we get above that, then 244 is going to be our next level, not to mention like 245. I think there's going to be some upside coming, but Tesla may remain choppy and sideways at first because there's no confirmed breakouts just yet. And the reason there's no confirmed breakout is because of the resistance on Tesla, not to mention how the market is performing. Now, what about SPY? How is SPY looking? Honestly, guys, it's very simple the way I would analyze SPY. We're basically stuck between this channel. Now, if you zoom out, one of the things I called out was this rising wedge on SPY. We're stuck in a giant rising wedge, and this is like we're starting to get a break to the downside, but there's no confirmation that we're breaking hard yet. And there's no like typical breakout here. It's just a very slow, small little drop. We're kind of downtrending a little bit, but we're still range bound. So here's how I see it. I called out in the morning the 20 EMA on the 4-hour time frame at 454. If we lose that, you're going to be watching for a push all the way down towards 452. If we lose that, I would turn a lot more bearish. But for now, we're just going to be watching these charts very carefully. So looking at the chart, I just want to say that we've been doing this for at least since Wednesday, okay, of last week. Back and forth and back and forth. So what I'm thinking is this, okay? If we're bearish, you want to see SPY basically collapse and lose this white trend line, the bottom one, and come down to 452. If we lose that, this could even resemble kind of like a left shoulder. This could be like our head. This could be kind of like a head and shoulders. Then we could start sinking just a bit, right? That would be the more bearish case, okay? If we're bullish, there's always the possibility that this is like a flag that's forming. We're flagging. And we're about to do something like this where we kind of like go back and forth and back and forth. And then we attempt to break out. If we get a breakout, watch 455 is resistance. If we break that, 456.5 is the next level. If we get above that, there could be one last attempt for like 457 or the July high before this thing comes back down. But I don't anticipate we're going to get much of a breakout because the chart's looking weak, at least as of right now. The 4 hours looking bearish, okay? We're looking weaker. We have a head and shoulders like pattern as well already like developing. And on top of all of this, I just want to mention that we had a triple bearish divergence that's starting to play out. So it's looking weaker. It looks like the odds favor that this is just going to break down and we're going to end up just failing. By Friday, we might have like the breakdown, and this red possibility is going to play out. Right, that's more probable in my opinion. But I'm not going to be completely convicted until I get some kind of confirmation in the chart. Right, as of right now, we're doing this, and it looks like we're just going to continue to do this, and we'll have to see which way we break before we make any decisions. If we do get some kind of break to the upside, I think it might just be a bull trap before we come back down anyways. But as of right now, we're just doing this and we'll see which way we break because SPY is very indecisive. And sometimes in trading, you just have to be very, very patient and wait for the break. I know it's annoying, but that's what I'm seeing for now. But I still anticipate that there's a risk of downside. Now, the QQQ is a totally different story because we have a left shoulder here. We have a head that formed. This could be a right shoulder possibly. If we break down, watch 389 as support. If we lose that, watch 388. If that fails us, watch 386.5. If we end up losing that, we're going to start sinking down towards 383 or below that. So we have this head and shoulders, okay? If we lose 388, we're going to turn more bearish. Then we have 386.5, and then we're going to start sinking. This looks more bearish in terms of the setup, but we need to see a confirmed break to the downside. We have the confirmed like potential right shoulder. All that's left would be the break to the downside. We will see if that ends up happening. If you want to be bullish on the QQQ, you want to see it break and hold 391. As of right now, it hasn't done that, and this looks like it's topping, so I think the odds favor it breaking down. But just to be safe, we'll see what dictates this if there's any news for like Apple and any other stocks. QQQ looks a bit more bearish, but watch for confirmation just to be safe, as I always say. Apple has potential slanted head and shoulders, but the bulls could argue that we have like an inverse head and shoulders here, so it's very mixed. I think that Apple could attempt to go a little higher, but this could be forming like a flag. It could be flagging again for more downside. And we'll see if this imbalance could try to get it a little higher. But even if it does try to go higher, one could argue that we're still changing our direction. If we reject, excuse me, if we reject like this, excuse me, sorry guys, but if you look at this, we could be establishing a lower high, right? So this is our high here. We made a lower high. We could be making a lower low as well. So even if we do try to push a little higher, if it rejects, it could still come right back down into this 188 area as the technicals look bearish, and this could still be like a slanted head and shoulders. Now, if anything, I just want to mention that this chart's looking a bit more bearish thus far. To be bullish, I want to see it break 191. It hasn't really done that yet. All right, so Apple's looking a bit more bearish overall, but we need to see if we get a confirmed break to the downside below 188. If it does that, I would turn more bearish. If it breaks 191, I would turn a bit more bullish. But right now, we had a quadruple bearish divergence. It's starting to like turn, and this looks bearish, right? We have a change in market structure, right? We're making lower highs and lower lows. We could just start rejecting from here. If we fail to even break the high, I would just turn more bearish, and I think it's just going to break down. So it looks bearish. It looks like it's going to come down to at least 188 and start sinking. I find this to be a lot more probable, but just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels, as I always say. On Nvidia, this one's like really interesting to me because it has a very, very mixed looking setup. So one could argue that we have an inverse head and shoulders. This is like our left shoulder. Our head is here, and we're about to form like a right shoulder. I think it's going to come down, but this could be a trap. If we're bullish, it has to hold above 475 to point 0.5. If we hold that and bounce, it could start pushing back up towards 485 plus, maybe even higher than that. If we're bullish, right? But right now, I'm not gonna like count on that. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 475 to 474. If it loses that, we're gonna be coming down to 468. So what do I think is gonna happen? I just want to mention that we're still looking bearish overall. It still looks bearish because what are we doing? It's just plain fundamentals. We made a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Might be making a lower low, right? For me to change my mind and turn bullish on Nvidia, I need to see it break and hold 490. If it manages to break this 490, it's going to turn bullish. It's going to try to make its way back up. If it fails to do so, hey, we're going to be watching support at this 474 area. And if it fails there, it's going to be coming back down to 468. This looks bearish. This chart does look bearish. Looks like it might get very close to like 470. So as of right now, I still favor the bears a bit on Nvidia, but my opinion could change if we get above 490. For now, make sure you watch for the potential inverse head and shoulders to see if we bounce or not, and watch and see if we end up failing. All right, that's what I'm seeing for Nvidia. Make sure you watch it carefully. Those are the main five I typically talk about. Let's just go over a couple of others very quickly. So when it comes to SoFi, I just wanted to mention that SoFi looks a little bit more bullish now. Got a nice balance. We're going to be looking for a back test of 7.43, then a rejection. It looks like it might test the 4-hour 200 EMA. It likes to do that. I could see it go a little higher towards 7.43, then reject. The IWM is very indecisive. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 178. If you're bullish, you want to see it break above 180. If it breaks 180, it could push up to 182. If we lose 178, we can sing towards 176.6. In my opinion, it's completely flat, so we'll just have to wait and see which way it goes. It's completely indecisive so far, just like other tickers such as SPY. Microsoft has, once again, it tried to break its high, but it's continuing to develop a bearish divergence. There's no sign that it's breaking down yet, but there's no sign that it's invalidating the bearish divergence either. This means that even if it goes higher, there's going to be a rug pull coming to Microsoft. That's what this is suggesting. If we lose 376, watch 372. If we lose both of those, I would turn more bearish. If we break above 380, watch for 382. The technicals suggest it might push a little higher and then reject, could push to 382, then reject and come back down. If 380 isn't the top, or it might just reject from here and start sinking towards 372. So if it pushes higher, be very careful. If this bearish divergence remains, it could reject, or it could just reject from here and come back down to the low 370s. Besides that, we have AMD, which is very indecisive. If we're bullish, watch it break 124 to 125. That's going to be bullish. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 121.6 to come back down to 119.5. Right now, we're in the dead center. We're kind of just chopping around, so we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. When it comes to the VIX, we have this slight looking. We're basically very oversold, to be honest with you. We're at the lowest we've seen the VIX in years, if anything. And typically, when it breaks below 13, we tend to see like a really aggressive bounce. That's what tends to happen. Right now, there's no sign of a bounce on the VIX, but if it does get that bounce, like historically, then that suggests that the market might see a rug pull. As of right now, we're not getting that, and the VIX is still looking weak. So we'll just have to wait and see if we get that bounce. There's no confirmation of a bigger bounce yet to like 13 plus, 13.71 especially. I think it might try to test the 20 EMA, but we have to wait and see if that's the case. We're still waiting for it. On the SQQQ, there's no confirmed bounce yet, but there's a possible inverse head and shoulders. We also have this gap to fill up here. So we'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case, but this has a potentially bullish setup. We have a gap to fill in the daily around the 17, so it looks like it might bounce towards like 17 plus. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. It's kind of curling on the daily. So the SQQQ is turning a little bit more bullish. It's starting to look a bit more bullish because the QQQ is starting to look bearish, and I think that this might signify some downside for the markets, for the different equities out there. We'll have to wait and see, but for now, this is looking a bit more bullish, and the others are looking different. For the dollar index, this is also curling a bit, but there's no sign of a balance. It's still looking bearish. We'll see if it holds 103. We're approaching some key support. As of right now, there's no sign of a bounce yet. Coinbase still looks bullish on the daily. There's no sign of it breaking down yet. It is overbought, and there is a bearish divergence technically forming on it, but there's no sign of it breaking down. Since it managed to break, it surprisingly broke like 117. If it keeps going, we'll be watching for 125 next, and we'll see if it rejects or not. Historically, it does not reject around this area, so we'll be watching this to see how it goes. It's very overbought, though. It is due for like a little pullback. We'll see if it pops a little bit more towards 125, then rejects from here. But right now, there's no sign of it, so we'll just have to be patient with it. Google's looking a bit more bearish on the daily. You can see the way it was moving. Now we're kind of range bound. We're stuck between 137 and 140. If we lose 137, we're going to start sinking towards 135 to 134.5. There's possible head and shoulders like setup, so it looks a bit more bearish to me on Google. But just to be safe, let's see if it loses 137 at the 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. All right, so it looks a bit more bearish, but let's see if it breaks the 50 EMA. Then I would turn more bearish if it does. But just to be safe, if you're bullish, you want to see it break above 141. As of right now, there's no sign of that, and it favors the bears a bit more, in my opinion. Amazon pushed a bit, but it's still developing a bearish divergence as it's continuing to push. This suggests that it could push higher just like Microsoft and then reject or reject from here. If we lose 146.5, watch 144.5. If we push up higher for 150, if we break 150, watch 152, then a rejection. I think it's going to pop more than reject or reject from here. Same thing with Meta. Meta is starting to look a little weaker at first. It's going to test 334, basically the 50 EMA. If we lose that, it's going to start sinking towards 330. If we hold it, we could try bouncing. It depends on this test. As of right now, it looks bearish. It looks like it might break down. All right, guys, I was trying to make the ending quick. That's it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day, and don't forget to be watching Tesla very carefully. Tesla has potential to push up hard, but watch resistance and do what you have to do, guys. I will see you guys in the next one. So thank you, and peace out.